talk about how it's important to educate people so they know how to make good decisions. And Lisa talked about the importance of appealing to the emotional to help people make good decisions. So we also like to think about what do people need to know to help them make good decisions. How can we get more information out there related to complex ideas so that we can make policy level decisions. So hence why communication studies plus public policy plus science communication, all those things together. I think the solution to this is a story, and hence tell me a science story. So this in part becomes a problem of both attention and engagement. So we know that we have lots of information available to us that's out there, and sometimes it can seem really overwhelming. We can get information from all myriad of our social network sources, so whether you are tweeting today or on Facebook, or you're searching your news sites to find information, or you're getting information from your classes and you're at a conference, that's a lot of information. So what we do when we have lots of information is we start to filter that information down. So I start to follow the people that I like on Twitter, and I like to follow the people who think like me on Facebook. And those people who have different political opinions, like I'm just gonna unfollow, but not unfriend, like we'll see. So marketers are also thinking about this. So they want to cut through all of this information overload and see how can I grab your attention to get you to buy my product, and not just get your attention, but also be thinking about how I can get you to engage with it. So not just tell you about it, but get you to think about it and engage with that idea and think about it just a little bit further. So this idea of what we're thinking about becomes both a problem of attention, getting your attention, and also engaging you with an idea. So there's some old thinking about left brain, right brain type thinking, but how it's conceptualized is how people make decisions. So when people are thinking about decisions, we sometimes like to say they're very logical, rational beings, and we make decisions only on logic. Hashtag election 2016. But we do ask humans to make logical, rational decisions, right? We ask our judges to be free of emotion and make determinations based only on the facts and think only about the facts. But we find that actually people are also thinking related to their emotions. And so part of this becomes true. We think, well, I'm thinking with my emotions, I'm thinking in a story, I'm relating what I'm hearing to my life experience, to what I know, what's going on in my room in my house. So this idea becomes an idea of how we think about our rational self and also our narrative self that helps us come up with ideas. This is a method that's used in the courts a lot. One experiment looked at how judges make determinations based on they're applying the rational thought, but what if they read a novel at the same time they were thinking about this case? Does that open up their mind? And in fact, it does. We ask them to read a novel by Charles Dickens while they're working on a case. They're able to put themselves in someone else's shoes. This experiment was also done with jurors. So we asked jurors, like, can you think about putting these facts into a story? How would you construct it? How would you write that story? What would it look like? And this idea of being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes becomes a really key point in decision making. And this theory is called the social imagination. So your social imaginary is how you're able to put yourself in someone else's shoes to make an open-minded decision. So we thought it would be really fun to play with this just a little bit. And we got this idea, what if we told science in a story and asked people to make decisions with that information? Would they be open-minded to think about the story? And what would they do with it? And so we worked with Lee Gutkind, who is the so-called godfather of creative nonfiction, and we said, let's put climate change into the story. Let's tell a story about it and see what happens. Can we engage people with that idea to make them think more deeply about the concept, think bigger about it, and also put themselves into that story as well? So we thought about it and thought we could do this, and in fact, because we wanted to study decision making, we also asked them to think about thinking about creative nonfiction, thinking about climate change, but also make a policy recommendation based on that decision too. So taking it from concept to application through decision. we did, we created the same story and we tested it out in deliberations and in focus groups, and we said, here are two versions of the story. One is a story that takes people through the discovery process. It helps people think about things like, oh, I learned about climate change when I met this person. This is what it looks like. And we also took it in just what we call a newsletter format. So just your basic textbook newsletter, to the point, rational, logical decision. And we wanted to compare how people reacted. If it was in a story, they had to think about actually walking through and talking to scientists and talking about ideas with others. Are they thinking about it, and are they able to put themselves in someone else's shoes? Getting them outside of their own thinking about their opinions on climate change, and better able to think about how others might think about climate change. And what that looks like here in Lincoln. Do they recommend changes in sustainability policy in Lincoln? What do they think about how long should our street lights be on? What should our recycling policy be like? If you're involved in city council lately, you might have a lot to say about that. So here's what we found. Engagement is our biggest idea. So engagement is often related to behavior change or how people are interacting with ideas. What we find is that people are really engaged with the story. When they hear about the story, sometimes they're expressly thinking about the story, and sometimes they're not knowing they're engaged with the story. So they're saying things like, well, I really preferred the newsletter version, but I remembered when that guy stopped at the store and talked to that person about solar panels in the story, and this is what he said. So they're remembering things really deeply from the story, and that's very helpful to them. Some of them expressly said, I was more engaged with this. I was better able to remember. If he was surprised, then I felt surprised by something. And as we went through it that way, the story seemed relatable to people. They thought, well, I didn't know a lot about climate change before. I had some ideas, but I could really relate to this guy in the story, and he was finding out. I had some of the same questions he did. As you might suspect, though, with the story, there's some other things like, well, who is this narrator? Is it a fictional story? Is it a true story? What's going on? So here we thought about like knowledge and bias and what comes in here. And so when we thought about knowledge, we looked to see, does knowledge change? Are they remembering and retaining more information between the newsletter and the story format? What we find is that either audience, we tested them through surveys before and after and found that they both increased knowledge the same amount. So there wasn't a significant difference between the two, but that still tells us something good that shows us that they're increasing in their knowledge when they're asked to read over materials. One of the benefits we had about doing this in a focus group format is that we could stand over them and watch them read stuff. So we could make sure they were reading, which is helpful. When we tested this online, it's harder to make sure people are reading. So it was nice to be able to reach people and talk about in-depth perspectives and thinking about it. But as far as how they were retaining knowledge, it seemed not to matter. The bias perspective was the idea of, what is the narrator trustworthy? Who is this? How do we know this guy? What's he figuring out? This sort of thing. The other thing that was a concern with bias is because we were looking at an issue like climate change, where people come in with opinions and might already be polarized on the issue. We're very sensitive to this. Lisa Phillips is in our audience today. She'll probably tell you about some of the work we've done with drones and other areas, asking people about this and seeing what role that plays into how people are making decisions and if an issue is polarized and what they're looking to know about. So we think the story helps people be more open-minded. And in fact, it does. When we looked at measures of open-mindedness, we found that people who read the story showed increased levels of open-mindedness and increased levels of creative engagement with the group. And as they were discussing ideas, they seemed to approach it in a more open light, which is really what we want to get to when we're thinking about complex science that can be polarizing, that we might not know a lot about. We want to make people open-minded and think about these ideas. So where do we go from here? I say, let's put them together. Let's make our humanities, our art, our writing match our science. Let's put them together and see what we can come up with. It's a great idea. When Lee Gutkin did this, he had a grant from the National Science Foundation to put together scientists and creative writers in a room together and make them think head-to-head about how to present their information. You can imagine that that might be challenging. It was. But But it was also really great. They got some great publications in popular press where they were able to share information with a larger, more public audience outside of peer-reviewed journals. So that expands the reach of science, which is also a goal. As we increase exposure to science, and as we are able to better share it with others, we can help our policymakers make good decisions from that. And so if we combine our arts and sciences together, we can think well about things, and think largely about things. We see ideas like infographics and images and graphs and charts. We see listicles on BuzzFeed that are able to grab our attention. I wonder if we had to think about science in an art installation, what that would look like. If we thought about science through model drawing, what that would look like. I think there's a lot of fun experiences here we can have. So I propose make room for humanities, science, and tell us a story. Thank you.
We have time for a couple questions. So it seemed like the narrator in the creative nonfiction piece was really important. Were there other things in the creative nonfiction piece that people really grabbed onto?
Yes, that's the question. So the question was, were there other parts of the creative nonfiction piece that were important that people were able to pay attention to? And in part, the story process, so having a story arc with a beginning, middle, and end, help people follow along that discovery process. So where the narrator was going. One of the things that we thought about, which you heard Lisa talk about earlier, was the idea of making it really local, making it feel very current to people. So we made sure the story took place in Omaha, Nebraska, as opposed to far away from Nebraska, because we were thinking locally about it, and that was really helpful to us. So we wanted it to be local, something that people could think about, and making sure that process of discovery was shared through the story in a way that wasn't shared in the newsletter piece. Good question. Yes?
So with regards to like a newsletter versus a story piece, in what way would you be able to disseminate the story piece? Because newsletters, you can email them out, you can post them places, and there just isn't as much it's not as common to see story pieces going out.
Yeah, that's a great point. When we think about popular science and science journalism, we have lots of journalists here today. They think with you start from the lead and describe down. So you start big, narrow it down. And with a story, it has that story arc, so it has beginning, middle, and end, and that thought development. I think that can be shared in popular press in a different way, where we see essays in, say, the New Yorker talking about an experience with learning. When we can combine those places in our magazines, in our stories, in our web magazines, those sorts of things, I think we can tell stories in a different way. So it's a different way of looking at that from an essay perspective as opposed to a journalistic perspective. Anything else?